What is the hidden secret that, in your opinion, is hurting colleges?
To get into the elite universities, success is conformity.
Yeah.
To get in the best schools, the best and brightest have to conform to a very, very prescribed narrative. And what do they learn when they're there? The narrative continues.
Welcome to the Future of Education podcast, hosted by MacKenzie Price. MacKenzie is the founder of a revolutionary new school model that's disrupting education through AI. Join us as we discuss the latest in education innovation.
There is a brand new university that is taking the world by storm. It has gotten so much national media attention. It is the new Ivy League. If you think about Harvard and Stanford and MIT, it's called the University of Austin, and it is right here in Austin, Texas. And I am so proud to be able to have the president of the University of Austin, President Kanelos. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I will confess, this is my first interview with the president of a university. So thanks for being my guest on Future of Education.
Oh, I'm just so delighted to be here. Thanks, MacKenzie. There's nothing more important than the future of education. So let's talk about it.
You and I can completely agree on that. I really believe that education is the fundamental, foremost area of focus that everyone in the world should care about. I'm working on it in the K through 12 space. You're taking on the higher ed space. So tell me about University of Austin.
So University of Austin, or like we like to call it UATX.
UATX.
Is America's newest university. We're the first new university in the state of Texas since 1963.
Amazing.
Which says something really important about how challenging and difficult it is to start universities in this country today. And that's something we can talk about separately. But University of Austin was born 3 years ago out of an idea that came out of discussions that I was having with figures such as Barry Weiss and Joe Lonsdale and Neil Ferguson. At the time, I was a college president on the East Coast, a little tiny school called St. John's College.
Which has a great reputation as well.
St. John's is the third oldest college in America. It was founded in 1696.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yep. There's Harvard, William and Mary, then St. John's. So I've gone from being the president of the third oldest college in America to being president of America's newest university.
You know, no wonder you look younger than when I first met you a couple years ago, Pano. That must be the reason.
I'd spent my whole career in higher education. I was a professor, a dean, and then a college president, and had become increasingly concerned with certain trends in higher education, the financial model of higher education, the curricular model of higher education, and maybe most importantly for this project, let's say the issue around first principles. Like, what are universities for? What's the primary reason that we have universities, and are we still fulfilling that promise? And
what are universities for?
So universities are where society does its thinking. Universities should be focused on the fearless pursuit of truth. That's why we fill them with people called scholars, and we fill them with students who are there to learn how to think, not what to think. And what we've seen in the culture over the past decade, maybe 2 decades, it's going to drift away from that core mission, which is producing graduates who are able to see the world whole, able to think of things critically, able to look at problems from many, many different perspectives, able to bring different ideas to the table. We've seen that replaced in higher education increasingly by a monoculture, where certain ideas are held to be sacrosanct and other ideas are kept hidden or denied access to the table.
Yeah. Diversity of thought is kind of the enemy in a lot of colleges today.
So for us, intellectual pluralism, open inquiry, civil discourse, those are the core principles of a university. So we asked the question, could we change higher education from within? And that seemed to be too daunting a task. So we thought, let's start our own university and get it right the first time.
We have something in common there, because that's exactly how I felt. It's like taking on the traditional public education system in K through 12 is a really, really challenging task. And there was only so many times I want to beat my head against the wall of that. And so create our own distribution system. And in your case, it was create a brand new university. And you said this idea was hatched 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
And there's a lot that's happened in 3 years, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when we made our first announcement about the university publicly in November of 2021. And at that time, we said we would have our first freshman class in 3 years. That was probably the stupidest thing I've ever said publicly in my life.
Very stupid, and yet
we have now brought our first freshman class in within 3 years.
Your first freshman class, the Brave 100, is that what we call them?
Yep.
The Brave 100.
Yeah.
And I have a special affinity for that class of Brave 100 because we have 2 of our Alpha student graduates who are part of that Brave 100 class. We were so excited about those admissions because, again, our goal is we want to deliver kids who are, able to get into any school they want, that are doing big things. And so the fact that we got 2 Alpha students to come, to be able to get into the University of Austin in our first year of having a big graduating class was hugely exciting. So,
very exciting for us as well.
I'm a very proud mom figure school operator when we think about that. Okay, so you've got 100 students.
Yeah.
And really, University of Austin is delivering. Your professors that you have are phenomenal. You have attracted, in fact, I think I remember hearing how many people were interested in coming to work for University of Austin when this was.
Yeah, when we first made our announcement in November of 2021, we had no idea how the kind of impact it was going to have on the public consciousness. I published a kind of manifesto, was on a Substack, Barry Weiss's Substack. We thought we'd get some attention, and things just blew up. We were, for the first 48 hours after that announcement, the #1 story in the world on Twitter. Still Twitter then.
And exactly. For those who don't know Barry Weiss, Neil Ferguson, Joe Lonsdale, the powerhouses that are on your board who have been advocates for UATX are insane. And they come from kind of all different walks of life, all ends of the political spectrum. What they were all united in was this idea that there should be diversity of thought and fearless pursuit of truth allowed in a college campus. Let's develop these young leaders to do big things.
Yeah, look, those of us who take higher education seriously know that if you don't fill your institution with people who are the best and brightest in all different areas and get them to sit around a table and discuss things that are of utmost importance for society, for culture, for the human race, and give them free rein to be, adventurous thinkers and test ideas out. If you don't do that, the institution will fail, and universities are so important. Eventually, society will pay a price for that. So we brought together leaders across so many fields. The founding trustees, as you say, include Joe Lonsdale, who's, one of the great tech innovators in the world, who moved to Austin and founded Palantir, and is just such an exciting presence. Barry Weiss, who's changed really the media landscape with the formation of the Free Press. Neil Ferguson, now Sir Neil Ferguson, the world's greatest living historian.
And I'll tell you, that guy knows how to keep a conversation lively and engaging. He is fiery. So, by the way, can you help get these guys on my podcast too? Would you put in the good word for them?
I'll work on it.
Yes.
But even with Neil Ferguson, you're like, okay, this guy's an academic. He's an historian. Even he breaks the mold. Because what he advocates for is what he calls applied history, which is how do we take the lessons of the past and apply them in the present? He's not sitting in some archive with, some elbow-patched professor pushing his glasses up his nose, writing books that nobody's ever going to really be interested in. This is a guy who brings history to the present.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time. And he was at Harvard, then at Stanford, and he realized hey, these institutions, they're kind of missing the boat on this. And that's part of the reason that University of Austin has got this. It is the new university to be at.
Yeah, we've had such a tremendous response, both from faculty, students, donor support. In fact, you were talking about faculty earlier. I was going to say that after our first announcement, we became so visible so quickly that within 2 to 3 weeks of that first announcement, we had 6,000 professors from other universities contact us asking if they could work for the university. Yeah. We didn't even have a single job posting at that point. We literally just announced what we were going to build.
Yeah.
But that gives you a sense of, underneath the surface, what professors actually think at their own institutions.
There is a thirst for flexibility and a place where they can do research, where they can, go after what's right and what's there and not be quieted. And one thing that I think is important to bring up, and this gives probably the average listener a little bit more information on the university landscape than they might have known. Let's talk about tenure. Just give the very short thing around tenure and professorship.
So tenure was originally conceived of as a way to protect academic freedom, right? The idea behind tenure was, you're going to hire faculty, and in order for them to be as free-ranging as they want to be in their scholarship over time, they need job protection. What's actually happened is tenure is the primary culprit in destroying academic freedom, because the way the tenure system works is that tenured faculty, people who have jobs for life, get to hire and then promote and tenure their own colleagues.
Yeah.
And human nature, given, what it is, sort of always iterates in one direction. These tenured faculty have hired over time people that they agree with.
Yeah, only the ones that are like them.
That they're comfortable with. And so, those who have tenure have their academic freedom protected to some extent. But academic freedom is strangled at the front of the process because the aperture for entryway for professors who might disagree with them or have different perspectives is closed.
They can't do it. Yep.
And so what we've seen over time is that I think the primary reason universities have become monocultural is the way that we hire, promote, and tenure professors. And so at our university, we don't have tenure.
You don't have tenure.
I mean, who in life gets tenure, right? And so we have professors who are thrilled to be there, and they know that as long as they're committed to our cause, working hard, doing the things that they're meant to be doing, they're part of our communities. When I first wrote the manifesto that we published, I think the opening line was something like, so many institutions in American culture are broken, and college is the most broken institution of all.
Wow. So you think college is broken.
I think college is broken. And it's not, I'm not the only one who thinks this. That trust in universities is at its all-time low. Many students are opting not to go to universities. Those who go are questioning the ROI, the return on investment. I think primarily it's because universities have lost their way. They've forgotten that their core purpose is to educate. I mean, universities are they're schools. What do you need for a school? You need somebody who's going to teach, somebody who's going to learn, and somewhere to do it. And yet you go to universities today, and there are the climbing walls and the sushi bars and the stadium. I mean, I was at University of Texas Stadium this past weekend, and it like that could, the stadium alone would swallow most small colleges, right? As you drift away from the core purpose, you start using your resources on things that aren't themselves core. So when we look at the cost of higher education going up year over year, the number of faculty has not changed in any substantial way over the past decade at most schools. Administration has metastasized.
Yeah.
So you have places like Yale where they have more administrators than students now.
Yeah. The same thing has happened in K through 12 as well, right? The number of administrators have gone up. In fact, in K through 12, teacher salaries have not risen. It's just the bloat that's happened in universities and K through 12 education as a whole.
And what happens when administration grows? Administration starts to take over the rest of the institution. Administrators have a different set of values than teachers or students have. And, one of the reasons I think we sometimes feel that the modern university or many modern universities are sort of, let's say ideologically oriented is because the administrators are. Administrators come in, and what they're really pushing upon their institutions are kind of, I'll call it an alternative civics education. They've decided that, these are the ideological values that should animate an institution. And they create this whole network of things to enforce those values. Everything from, compelling faculty or prospective faculty to write DEI statements before they get hired. It's not the professors who are asking for that. That comes from the administration. Or, creating things during orientation week that insist that students start to realize that there's an acceptable set of values.
Yeah.
And there are values that are not accepted, and you're either going to be part of the program, or you better be quiet while you're there.
Yeah.
Probably the meta crisis that we have going on in higher education is that higher education should be where the best and brightest do the greatest and highest things. It's a place where we take the best and brightest students and we accelerate their talents. The way the system is set up now, to get into the elite universities, what do you have to do? You go through high school and you have to check every box and follow a very narrow path and tailor yourself to what you perceive to be the expectations of admissions committees are.
Yeah.
And so we're taking our young people, and rather than instilling them a sense of creativity and critical thinking and freedom of thought, we're telling them that success is conformity. That to get in the best schools, the best and brightest have to conform to a very, very prescribed narrative. And then they get there, and what do they learn when they're there? The narrative continues. There's success at the end of it, a pot of gold dangled in front of them if they keep their mouth shut, if they keep their head down, if they follow a prescribed path. We're taking our best and brightest students, and rather than activating the very things we need from them, which is their originality of thought, their ability to solve problems, their ability to be risky and go outside the box, we are tamping down their creativity and innovation. So what higher education has to do is reclaim that space. And that's what we're doing at the University of Austin. We want to graduate builders and innovators and creators and entrepreneurs, and we're going to teach these young people how to accept that challenge.
Yeah. And you guys are doing incredible work as far as really digging into liberal arts, great critical thinking, having this incredible contact with professors. And then let's talk a little bit about your Polaris Project.
So I think probably the most distinctive feature of the University of Austin, at least distinctive in the realm of higher education, is what we call the Polaris Project. Every single student, every single undergraduate embarks upon a 4-year-long moonshot project. From the moment they come to the university, we start working with them to sort of begin the process of introspection, helping them understand what their greatest gifts are, what their passions are, and how they can bring their greatest gifts to the world's greatest need. And then, you start with a kind of, let's say, vocational introspection, but what you're really trying to do is pull out of them something concrete that they can do.
Yeah.
So that by the end of the first year, they are ideating concrete projects that will have significant impact on the common good. And then we're teaching them how to design and how to get the resources they need and how to build and how to execute, and hopefully take them all the way through one of these projects by the time that they graduate, or at least get them pretty far along the way. It depends on how ambitious the project is. And the projects that these students are thinking about are incredible. My favorite project that a student shared with me so far, this was before we had opened our doors. I was asking a young man about his interests, and he said, well, I'm really passionate about physics and nuclear power. I'm like, okay. He said, so, what are you going to do with that? How do you take that passion and think about something that you could do that would be, that would contribute to the common good? And he said that he had been reading about the U.S. Navy and how the Navy, most of the ships are nuclear powered, decommissions their naval ships, dry docks them, and they still have decades worth of nuclear power in their nuclear cores. So his project, he decided, was going to be to try and find a way to tap all that untapped energy to power industry, to power seaside towns and all that. It's latent energy. Nobody had really thought about that. So what an interesting project, because there's a technical aspect, but there's a political aspect. There's an economic aspect. There's just, how do you navigate? What's prevented us from even thinking about this or doing this so far? This young man has 4 years to figure that out.
Yeah, he's working on that. So, that project, that idea, that project is amazing. I will say I don't think it's totally unfamiliar coming from where I am at Alpha School, where our kids work on their Alpha X masterpiece project. And I will say the two students that got into University of Austin were two of our students that really went full throttle into their masterpiece project. And you're attracting incredible students. I mean, this is becoming the new school, the school to go to, and it's there. Tell me, you mentioned that one example. Tell me about what kind of student you're looking for all those parents who are sitting there listening to this saying, I want to get my kid into a great school. I want them to be able to get into the great school and University of Austin. What are those students, what are they showing up like? And then I'm also going to ask you, heads up, like, how do our Alpha students compare?
That wraps up part 1 of this episode, but don't worry, there's a part 2 coming soon. Thanks for listening to MacKenzie Price and the Future of Education podcast. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do it so you can stay up to date on all our episodes. You can connect with MacKenzie on social media and be part of our daily conversation over on Instagram at futureof_education. For more info about the show and our guests, you can always visit futureofeducationpod.com. Lastly, if you're loving what you're learning, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts.